Good morning and welcome to Ask DeAnna Anything. We got DeAnna here, I'm Abby, and you're here for Ask DeAnna Anything. DeAnna Batdorf is an Ayurvedic practitioner, my body educator, lymphatic specialist, and DeAnna Essentials formulator. Nothing is TMI for DeAnna here. And the DeAnna Essentials mission is a place for all people to heal, learn, and grow. We provide a community of support to empower individuals with knowledge, tools, and skills for their optimal well-being. So thanks for joining us here today. And let's see, what do we want to start off with? Any tidbits of inspiration coming through for you on this Thursday?
Well, we did another community clinic yesterday, and I'm just really excited to be back to having that as a low-cost option for people to get group care. And some people are like, I don't know about this group care, like it's a lot of energy. And I won't deny that, it is a lot of people just really wanting to take care of you, whether that be two or that I come in three and sometimes even four people, doing everything for you, whether you got a pulse reading and they're, meticulously laying out your handouts, or whether it's the hands-on and we're being specific and looking for something to change. And how do you keep doing the work at home? But it's just, I am 28 years in to running donation clinic. And it was really nice to have a little break. I've never taken a break. So that's kind of wild. And I've loved it all along. So it's almost emotional for me to be back to doing clinics. Even if one of the rooms is right now, like in our living room, my living room, that like we turn into a sweet little container. And then of course we have the yurt outside, but it's working and it's okay. I guess one of the things I want to share is it's okay to start simple, and to simplify. And it's really about showing up for someone, and you can almost, if you really think about it, you could do that almost anywhere.
It's so true.
And so like, don't have such high ideals that you make them unattainable. It's always been those tiny little baby steps or those humbling moments, and I know if I'm having that happen, after 28 years, if I'm still having that happen and that's part of daily, then I know it's just something to consider, in achieving goals. Like, what are those little tiny baby steps that you have to take that are going to get you there, and like do them, and then and just how do you be humble to like, just showing up for people. Just really, really powerful. And I'm not sure if I said this on the last one because I'm kind of on a little month-long journey with this, but if everyone in the world volunteered just a little bit every single month, this would be a different world. And I swear, if I can find time to do the amount of volunteer and free work I do, if I can do it, anybody can do it, like I have to figure it out in my schedule too, and you can always make a balance, but like you just have no idea what you're going to get from just providing service and showing up for people or animals or plants, the earth in need. Like, you get to decide where you want to volunteer. So it ends up being fun because it's relative to who you are and where you want to spend your time. But I do feel like this would be a different world if we just all put that little bit of pocket of time every single month.
Totally.
So I love the clinic, there's, very little money to be made and I could care less. It's enough to run it. And it's always only just been enough to run it. And yet it's one of the things that almost like makes me feel the most satisfied of all my work. And I find that really precious too. I'm like, wow, it's not about money and people are just getting what they need. And then you're working in groups and oh my gosh, once you give in to the like, I have four hands on me. I have 6 hands on me. Oh my gosh, DeAnna just came in. Now I've got 8 hands on me. You know, and obviously that's all done in a safe container and with respect and you know, be sure that feels safe, because sometimes, you know, some of those hands are not on someone when it's too much. But you think you'll be overwhelmed and it's too much exposure, and then people get in the middle of it and they're like, this is the most amazing thing that's ever happened to me. Right?
Totally.
And it's a little scary.
It's like in an hour, people are saying,
Yeah.
this is the most incredible experience of my life. Yeah.
And, you know, just the idea that I get to participate in that for my whole entire, you know, life's work timeline. It's just, I feel so blessed. So as a little thing goes off in the background.
The microwaves,
love
like
that.
toaster oven.
Yeah.
That's so sweet. I love that message, and I feel like that really applies to health in general. That there's so many of these like big issues that we all come to our like health journey with, and sometimes it can feel so overwhelming. It's like, what do I do? And just starting with those really small, simple things is what you're all about. So like that really translates to these big global challenges we're having, whether it's like climate change or political issues or you name it. It's just starting with an active service is so powerful. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, we're glad to be here today to answer some of your questions for everyone out there listening, so you can take those first steps in your health. And of course, you're always welcome to put questions in the chat as well. And if you're new here, you can always put questions on our website, DeAnnaEssentials.com too. So we're excited to help you out and lean into some good questions here. Okay, the first question was long, but I love that too. Okay, my 9-year-old son recently developed a tic in his hands, having to touch each finger to his thumbs. Last week, this tic moved to his eyes and lungs. It shows up as blinking while talking, fast, short breaths. I hear most tics go away if you ignore them, but I can't just ignore them now that it's in his lungs. It's obviously neurological, and I'm wondering if you can give me any guidance. I've asked around, and words like seizures and schizophrenia have come up with it, and it's totally freaking me out. How do I get to the root of this symptom?
Okay. So first place I'd like to start with this question is like, you know, what are the options, right? You've got like a set of symptoms. And I love that you already know one of the options or one of the directions is neurological. So, you know, we do have to kind of consider the nervous system. And then there's a whole nother part here that plays out in brain function and responses, which is the circulatory and the blood and what's going on in the blood. So we have to kind of consider the nervous system, and is it the primary weakness, or is blood affecting the nerves, since blood feeds out to the other tissues? And are they involved both together? So that would be one thing I would start looking as far as like the two prongs, if we will, you know, of like just like which direction. And what would come up with blood would be maybe if there was some kind of exposure to heavy metals. So, you know, that's just something to consider. And don't start getting all guilty, mama, because they're all over the place. And it was probably something you could not have done differently.
Totally.
Just saying, you know. But, you know, in Ayurveda, that would be sort of dirty blood, you know, it'd be toxic blood. And then those, you know, heavy metals, that toxicity is then foraging through the system, and heavy metals can be handled. So it's okay if it was something like that, you know? And that would be one thing to look at, toxicity in blood. And the other one could be mold exposure. And both of those people who are low blood pressure, running cold, are more susceptible. Like if you have a lot of fire, there are people who kind of move heavy metals, the word of cold. Yeah. You know, they kind of stir and metabolize those things a little bit more. And so if there's low blood pressure and they run cold, and then there's a toxin in there, I think that's a important detail. Otherwise, it could be that there's not quite enough protein and fats, and so there's not enough blood volume and viscosity and texture. Like anemia could easily, create this, where the blood's too thin, which is also a cold picture, So that's the things I would think of in there. And if I just was like, I don't know where to start and I'm waiting for labs, or I'm not getting, nothing showing up in a lab, I would probably start with Tulsi Essential Oil, because it is a good tridoshic related, it's not too hot, not too cold, but it's like blood, heart, brain 101. And I would just kind of start there and kind of be like, well, let's just see if we get the blood flowing a little bit more with the tonic, does it even just slightly calm it down? That would be interesting. If it's heavy metals, and that's a whole big conversation. But I would be then looking at, like, we would have to figure out how to liquefy. So the bases of heavy metals, you have to liquefy them to get them out safely. You do it over like 3 months time. There's no quick and hurry thing. It's not even going to work. You got to liquefy and dump them. So a lot of sweating and then, that's the world of calling namak, black sulfur salt. But the truth is, anything enzymatic, sour, sulfur is how we liquefy heavy metals the easiest. That's what I have found to be the easiest way to do it. And so those would be the things I'd look at for that. And then there's just the neurological. Okay, neurological still could be protein or fats deficiency. If you have a picky eater, and then they're picky about their proteins, or that type of thing, or they're only getting certain fats, like only eats cheese but won't have an avocado or coconut oil, those become complicated. And you could have a very weak nervous system from deficiency. So protein, power, fat, fuel. Think about that. You want power and fuel for the nerves to be resilient. And so that could be a picture with nervous system. The other thing that could be with nerves, if there was any kind of trauma onset, and it may not be it could be a big trauma that you don't know about, but it could be something that they visualized out in the world and it made an imprint, because you have to remember the eyes are blinking, and those are the 12 cranial nerves. They're behind our eyes, and that's the sensory and motor organs. And trauma, we always track the sensory, and sometimes it's all of them, but the truth of, like, was it around what you saw or sight, smell, taste, sound, touch? And think about how many of those are involved when there's yeah. So, it could be that something triggered a response and he went into a psoas hold, so there could be a trauma hold in the gut, and then that causes all this upward motion. Think about when we suck it in. So if you're noticing that he has a little bit more of like a stress response, or is also tightening in the jaw, or hiking up the shoulders and the armpits, those are things that we know means the psoas is locked up, and that would be a trauma relation. And then that would, really be a little bit more like breathing and body work, and unwinding. That's like a neuromuscular, that's muscle memory, and I just did a piece on muscle memory through Banyan Botanicals, a blog, so you should look that up. And I also just did blood and lymph for everybody, and then I'm going through all the other tissues next. So please look at that, and that might just, does that sound like that's what's going on? So deficient or trauma in the nerves, or toxic blood or deficient blood. And sometimes if blood is deficient, nerves are deficient. That'd be the simplest issue you got. So where's the proteins and fats? I would probably start there, because those are needed to even change that tic at this point. Tics show up with deficiency no matter what. It's just, what is it deficient from? The toxin, the trauma, malnutrition. And that doesn't mean you're not feeding your son right. That's not fair. for parents to do that, you know? And there's all kinds of, things that play out there. So those are the things I think of, and then I'm gonna just give a couple remedies. I don't know how old your son is. How old? What was the age? Was it
9?
okay? Depends on your 9-year-old. Depends on your child. But like, could you use a Neti Pot? Because Neti means third eye, and when you do a Netra Basti, when you do a Neti Pot, it's going up through the pituitary and through the hypothalamus, and then the other side is hypothalamus to pituitary. So there is a whole lot of clearing out trauma and clearing story that is done through the third eye cleanse, which is actually what Neti means, one eye. We can also find out where you are and see if there's a practitioner near you that we could refer to you to get some Neti, some Netra Bastis, which is the ghee bath on the eyes. And we, go in and massage and open up the tear ducts and calm those cranial nerves. And it's amazing for people who have the squinting or the tics, really, really effective. And you could, Mama, learn how to do those. It's just, again, your child has to be a willing participant.
Totally.
Otherwise, it's its own trauma, right? But I got all kinds of, I have treated so many different kids that actually think it's pretty amazing that they got this dough dam around their eye and this warm ghee. And
looks like a donut on your face.
Yes.
All right, you got a big donut.
And it feels good.
It does.
I mean, it feels so good. So there's that piece too, and then, there's just, I think you might want to even look at my eye care webinar for some more ideas, like the castor oil in the eyes at night. Like, that is just so nourishing for calming the nerves. And then I'll just give you one more idea, which is Palma Rosa essential oil, which is for muscular holding and nerve regenerating. It's not a sedative, but people put like a couple drops on their jaw for night so they don't clench or grind. It seems to help with dream state and getting more sleep. And then that's a whole other thing you might want to consider is where's the sleep level for this child? Because sleep deprivation, not getting enough sleep, straight up causes neurological issues. I mean, people have a lot of challenges when they don't get the sleep they need. So I would kind of track that too, and making sure, he's not stinking those video games at 2 o'clock in the morning, because that actually really ends up affecting over time, just another thing that's a reality for many homes, hopefully not, but something to think about. Yeah. Who's here with
we have
us?
some great
We
questions
got
on
all
the
kinds
chat.
of people.
Yay.
Oh, hello.
We have some questions from Gretchen.
Oh, hi, Noah.
From Noah.
Hi, Gretchen.
Yay, Noah.
This is
fun. Yay. All right, well, let's dive in with Gretchen's question.
Let's see what you got.
Right. I have a client that has PASH pseudomonas.
Yeah, very good.
Hyperplasia. Hyperplasia. Okay, we'll have to try that one again. But a benign mesenchymal proliferative lesion on the breast that may present clinically as a mass. Any advice on care? Her chest is also very dense in the tissue texture because of this. Her doctors are not concerned per se, but she is interested in changing this. Can you get any of those words?
Well, I can see them.
Okay, good.
Yeah. That's so first off, what I think would be the smartest thing to do here is to, why don't you go ahead and look that up, Abby? Because anytime I feel like I could totally follow this in the proliferation in the mesenchymal, I can totally get that as a lesion, but I feel like this is actually more of a thickening of the pec and the muscle wall, more than scar tissue in the skin tissue itself. But I want to just, let's be sure.
Saying that it is common in premenopausal women and can affect anyone of any age. It's generally a painless lump in the breast, and the size of the lump can vary. And let's see what this one says. A benign, mesenchymal proliferative lesion of the breast. Let's see, a low-grade angiosarcoma.
Okay. So, yeah. So I think the way we should probably look at this more than getting into these, first off, I obviously don't know everything about this. So I may not be the best person to ask just because I don't actually have a lot of experience with this. But
It's made mostly from collagen.
made from collagen. So it is in the skin, not in the muscle. I mean, we have collagen in muscle too. So it's a hard one to answer. The way I would look at this one is like, it's first off the word lesion. So right there, we know that that means that there is an opening in tissue that is inflammatory. So the word lesion is going to lead us to the fact that there's some inflammation going on. And I think we have to think about that factor, and just like when somebody gets an itis, diagnosis, any itis is inflammatory. And so I know we have to think about pitta here, which means we don't want to treat it like a calcification or a lymph lump that, has become, really matted. Those are easier to just go in there and start breaking them down once you know that it's, safe and benign. But something tells me there's a little bit of inflammation here, and if you really started going to town, that would be an issue. And then for whatever reason, I'm going to go a little intuitive because that's what I've got here.
Yeah, totally.
Even as somebody who I feel knows a lot about breast care, this is not something I've heard a lot of. So my intuition says that the pec and the armpits and the opening to the lymph channel obviously needs to open. And Gretchen, I know to open up the lymph drain, but I just want to be that reminder of like the armpits. And I kind of feel like there's a bunch of adhesions. So I think there's some like dry, this is my guess, there's dry matted lymph nodes and there's adhesions in the armpit to the pec. I just wonder how much has this person been using their pecs? How much is their work or their life about their upper strength? And I would probably go more muscular for now. I would really break down adhesions. I would open up the pec. I would make sure, all the muscles around the shoulders and the shoulder blades and the intercostals and the diaphragm. Something tells me that everything's kind of like this, and then a lot of use is happening, and then that kind of opens up, the tissue. So that's my hunch. I hope it's okay. I got to give you only what I got, but that's my hunch, is that the muscles need to open up, and then you could do some simple pumping of the lymph. And once you open up that muscle, my sense is that you're going to see a bunch of lymph that's matted, and then you can start kind of moving some of that lymph too. We normally would do lymph, blood, muscle. I would actually work a little back and make sure, that the tissues all opened up first. So
awesome. We got a couple of follow-up from Gretchen saying, thank you so much. She is an amazing TCM acupuncturist and is always using her upper body. You're right on. Thank you.
Hey man, there's intellect and there's intuition, and then there's also, clinical experience. So sometimes you got to put those all together and listen to the languaging. And, this is someone who I'd be like, let's not just go gouache on that right away, but let's work all around it, right? And just, secure that space. And Gretchen, what do you think the chances of that psoas being locked up too? Like as soon as you said what she does for a living, and I'm sure she knows how to have boundaries because she's a practitioner, but I wonder how much, responsibility she's got locked into her psoas, and how much is that kind of making more use of those pecs and upper channels, more stress as they're being used. So how does she actually like go through her day and use her upper channels from her pelvis, versus like upper strength?
Totally.
So it's just a sense I'm having.
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay, that was
Awesome.
good.
That's so good. We love the intuition. Okay. Diving into a question with Noah. Yay. She says, "Hi guys, I miss y'all. We miss you too."
We'll
DeAnna,
see you soon, though.
We'll see you so soon. DeAnna, can you talk about SAD, seasonal depression? I have my thoughts and it being connected to Vata, especially increased during the Vata season. I feel like a lot of people identify with the emotions and symptoms associated to it, and I would love to offer people a different perspective.
Okay.
Definitely relate.
Yeah. Okay, so I think there's two pathways that happen here. So the one pathway that I think is actually the most common, and it's not the one that's going to be the other one, which is kapha, and just like depression's kapha, this is kapha. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But the one I actually feel is more dominant is vata cold.
Yeah.
And this is why it goes into the cold of winter, you know, and the coldest element we have is ether, you know, so ether is empty space. And if you're going into this colder time and you're maybe, you know, dehydrated, or maybe not even dehydrated, maybe you just like when your blood goes cold, colder than it already is, it kind of takes you into this very lonely state. And so sometimes when somebody comes to me and says, I have depression, my question to them, especially if they look like they run a little more cold, or they look more vata in body structure and the way they present themselves, I'll be like, oh, they look more vata. So interesting, they're depressed. And I will say, hey, I want to talk about emptiness and loneliness and how depressing it is. So there's that word. But it's, you know, so it's like that's a very big word. It's kind of like the word anxiety or the word anger. They're core words for vata pitta kapha, but what are all the ways we can look at depression? And we want to keep in mind that even kapha can go too cold. You know, vata, one of the qualities is cold, and kapha is the quality of cool. And so both can go very yin, very low blood pressure once they stop moving, or having enough of that vitamin D and the sun beaming down on them, keeping them generating energy.
Speaking right to me.
Yeah. And as soon as that, you know, sun is not, you know, part of the tissue support from the outside, everything sort of starts going cold and constricted, and it's very sedentary, it's very lonely, and it's empty. And you want to be able to just meet the ethers and be like, wait, I could just like get comfortable in the stillness instead of getting lost in the stillness. Like, you know, getting lost in the ethers, you know? And it's a time where it's like people are like, well, it's cold outside, so I haven't been, you know, taking my walks or getting my exercise. And it's like, nope, that's really important. It's more important in winter because it's so natural and just happens in the other seasons. So it's like, this is not an easy season to go bundle up and get out in the cold. And we don't even live in a very cold place, but Noah does. You know what I mean? It's cold there. So that's what I think is an important thing to look at. And in the stillness or in the hibernation and just sitting in the warmth of the home, which is important because that's what this time is for. The bear goes in the cave. But if you're not truly comfortable with alone time or stillness, because you were taught to like keep going and know lots of people, and we're supposed to be interactive, and it's actually not everybody. Or some people have some of that, and then there's a whole other part of them, you know? So I think these are important details on kind of what I really see as the most, I'd say 70% of people who come to me who are clinically depressed or have seasonal depression, this is a little bit more of the truth. Or there's the person who is literally kapha, maybe, you know, they're already low metabolism, they're already kind of, you know, low oxygen to the brain, which is just the truth, and low circulation. And then they go more sedentary, and they just, you know, absolutely don't have an easy time. Like they do not have an easy time. I don't know if y'all hear this in the background, but my sweet little kitty is like having a heyday right now.
It's like, I hear you say exercise. All right.
Good example. But you really could have just cough or depression, and that is where we know it. And that's where you've got too much mucus, maybe too much weight, maybe too many burdens you're holding, and then you get cold and the burdens are still there, and it's heavy. So that's the other thing. It's just how empty versus heavy do you feel? Those are so different. But I think these are important details. So we need to do more heart tonics right now. This is a really good time to think about like fire cider and a little bit of ginger and cayenne, and it's a good time for those things. And thinking about like the Tulsi rose, which is easy to find in tea bag in the store, which is so perfect for keeping things kind of warm and heart generated, and then, we do really interesting things when we're sad and depressed. So it might end up being more sedentary than we think we are, because it becomes like surfing the web for hours and hours, or at the wrong time of hours, or just getting lost for hours and something, that maybe isn't serving us. So I'm always thinking, about that this time of year. Just like, okay, how much, like this is the time of year where I'm actually like, how many movies am I watching? How much TV am I taking in? How much am I surfing around, and like what am I surfing? What am I looking for? It's really important sometimes to step back off the computer or the TV and be like, let me be honest about what I'm searching, and then relate that to what are you searching for? You know what I mean? So, connection is what people are surfing for when they're, looking at things of sexual nature, you know what I mean? And then what are you searching for if you're kind of reverting back to like maybe old movies or like cartoons, or you know what I mean? Like how much are you searching for remedies in your childhood? How much are you searching for satisfaction and remedies and pleasure and connection? I like to step back because I go through different phases of like what kind of movies I'm watching or what documentary am I choosing. Sometimes it starts getting real, and then I'm like, where am I going? Where am I going? Like once in a while, sad movie to make me cry. Okay. Are things actually sad? Yes. But if I start making that kind of what I'm doing, over and over, then it's like, I better figure out what I'm going to do in the opposite. Staying warm is and active is such an important detail here. And that's always a bummer if you don't have like a super warm bathroom, and then here it is freezing cold, and maybe your bathroom isn't nice and warm, and then you're supposed to be doing salt scrubs. Some people don't even have hot water for more than a couple of minutes. Some people don't even have hot water. So there's that too. And then I'm always trying to help somebody strategically, like, okay, you have an electric radiator heater. You're going to literally sit next to that heater and do dry brushing because you don't have a shower, and just what is going to work for you. Steam inhalations, get that warm in the lungs. It's going to change grief. You got to keep the lungs warm if you want to change grief. You got to stay in the expansion. So that's an important one too. OSHA root is so smart right now. Just make sure you get it from the right source. I love Artemisia herbs, and they ship all over the place. She's brilliant, and I really appreciate her harvesting and the practices. She makes the OSHA root syrup. You can put in tea. And she also makes candied osha root. It's just brilliant. It was one of our top sellers at the center. It's just, that stuff is so dang good. She's at a Dixon, New Mexico. But you know, just a tiny little chew of osha, the heat it generates, and then you're swallowing that heat down to the stomach, and then it's getting into the bronchial and the lungs. And it's really, I mean, why do you think it's named bear medicine? You know, that's what the bears dig up and take into the cave. I mean, that's what they take in with them. So if they can keep a bear, and they're kapha, even though they're pitta kapha, but you know, you don't want to mess with the bear. They got themselves some pitta. But come on, they're kapha by structure. You know, that's why we have little teddy bears, even though they're not teddy bears. In nature, they're not teddy bears, but we sure have made them that because they're that snuggly. Kaphas are snuggly. They give a great hug. Kaphas give great hugs. You need a good hug, you go to the kapha. You need solutions, you go to the pitta. You need someone to stir it up and just take you out of your, you know, fixed state. You go to the no.
Okay, it looks like we're back.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Having some little Wi-Fi issues, but
Yep. See, lost in the ethers.
lost in the ethers.
Just saying, like it is inevitable. You know, you can try to make these things go as smooth as you want, but things happen. And it's funny how it's like anything can happen in the ethers. It's just, we could get a little more comfortable with that. And be like, yes, I'm a little lost or sad or lonely, you know, and feeling empty. And so I have to make some decisions on how to fill myself up. The other thing I just want to put into this conversation, and then we'll move on. I want to put in that, you know, people leave. Yeah. Loud if you can totally see us and hear us, right? Nope.
Okay, looks like we're back Wi-Fi, so
Yay.
we'll continue
Perfect.
on.
Good.
Awesome. Okay. The next question we got. Let's see. This one is like we're on Wi-Fi. Let's see. Let's see this time around. Okay, so what is great pre-pregnancy care and during pregnancy, like in the trimesters that people can?
Okay, so what care for each one of the trimesters?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I would say one of my favorite plants. So there's two that I love. One, if you look it up on the internet, it's looking very controversial. So I want to tell you where I stand with it anyway. It's ashwagandha. And I think ashwagandha is amazing for helping with pregnancy all the way through. You know, I have had some wonderful experiences where those babies are born right in their sac. It's so strong. And, you know, they're just like got that beautiful, thick, yummy lubricant to those babies when they're born. They are just like unctuous and super, super healthy, those ashwagandha and shatavari babies. So those are my two favorites. But I do notice people are like, they're saying don't do ashwagandha anymore. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's been being used for generations, centuries. You know what I mean? So you'll have to just see who you trust and what feels right for you. And that's true for so many things in the world. But it's a teaspoon in a milky, in like a milky tea every night. And you want to put it right in your teacup and then put your warm milk and then just put a lid on it. And that way you make a slurry, meaning you're going to like stir and get the sediment too. Such a big part of Ayurveda is making sure you're getting the fiber from the plant so you get all the medicine. They do think we're a little crazy for leaving all our medicine behind in the teapot. So think about that. You know, we want to get that in our bodies. So love ashwagandha. Some people do a half a teaspoon ashwagandha, half a teaspoon shatavari. And it is more cooling, where ashwagandha means strong like horse, so it's more warming. And so I think that is one of my faves all the way through. The other thing I like in third trimester, I'm just going to tell you what's there. That it's kind of a large question.
Yeah.
But evening primrose. I love evening primrose capsules as an oil. They're stable in capsules, so that's how you'll buy them. 4,000 milligrams a day during third trimester. That is going to prime your tissues so you can open up and stretch, and your skin can handle it, and your perineum can handle it. And I find that there's less tearing. And then you start opening those capsules from like due date on, you know, if you make it to your due date. And many people are often 2 weeks after due dates. You don't want to get too fixed on that. But from due date on, you start opening up one of those capsules and smearing it on your perineum and doing a little swab vaginally. And it just really preps the tissue for, you know, the chances of carrying, you know, just what can you do for that? So that's one of
Okay, back again.
Jeez.
Something about the Wi-Fi today. It's like, all right, it's winter season, time to chill out.
Yeah. So let's see. I was also talking about essential oils and how I'm not a fan of using them in pregnancy. Now, I have a whole class and handouts and things I teach at my course about when to use them in pregnancy, which ones are safe, why we would want them around. But I generally, as a rule, if everything is going as planned and growing great, no need to bring those essential oils in. I would keep them as like more of your pregnancy first aid. and using them safely according to what's going on only, you know. And I might even go more for spices or some fresh herbs from the garden as a gentler, simpler remedy. Usually women in pregnancy take on remedies really well, you know. The one I just thought of for that I do use though, I usually am like peppermint leaves for, oh my gosh, for nausea and for morning sickness, first trimester. Oh my gosh, chewing on mint leaves, you could chew on like easy 10, 12 of those a day, and it would only be supportive. And then I have people smell the peppermint oil. It's amazing how effective it is. And then you can, you know, consider like I tell women like put 3 drops of peppermint in a bowl, and then you just keep kind of doing a little tap and a little swab. And I'm not into using a lot of oils on the tongue, but man, it's so effective for nausea and like that. You know, when you get into the extreme vomiting for some that get it real severe, it is so effective. But only in needed, you know, only if needed. And if those mint leaves are working, you don't even need that peppermint oil. But it is the one I would mention. It's just a very handy one to have around when you're in that situation. Yeah, I'm trying to think of what do I say for a second trimester. Um, it's usually more about the conversation and just getting your body ready. You know, is your body opening up? I do a lot of lymphatic care. I mean, I'm all about salt scrubs in pregnancy, and the bigger that baby is growing, the more you know. When you get to a point where you're like, I can't get down to my feet, it's like, yes. What friend, or you know, your partner, if you have one, what friend, what family member, who is going to scrub you down? Because it is one of the smartest things you could do. I do not see postpartum depression with my clients. I just don't. I keep I'm an advocate for them keeping their lymph moving and getting lymph massage right after labor. You know, like, you know, within 2 or 3 days, like get a lymph massage, you know, and start those lymph massages on those babies immediately too. And if you do have a partner who's going through this journey with you, they need a lymph massage because they just went through a whole hormonal, you know, exhaustion, you know, endorphin, you know, picture too. We don't want to forget about the partners, you know. And so ashwagandha could be taken together. You know, everybody does great with the alkaline mint leaf that's full of oxygen. So I also think it's important to like have some of these things be that both of you are doing, and it just makes a better bond. You know, if there's a partner involved, you know, very important.
That's so sweet. I love that image and that recommendation. Awesome. Okay. Hey, Deanna. Hey, Abby. I have a question about pinworms. What would be your protocol to get rid of recurring or serious pinworm infestation?
Okay. Woo, no fun. Those
fun.
things are they're massive multipliers. So the first thing you want to know is as you're moving them out, like we're going to talk about killing them to get them out so they don't keep multiplying, and then you're getting them out and they're multiplying, blah, 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 blah. So you do have to get into a like, you need to weaken them and even start killing them off. And that's where essential oils totally shine. You are getting medicine straight to the bloodstream, plus you can apply it right onto the abdomen. It goes right into the intestines, bloodstream. There, that is just like targeted medicine. My favorite thing about them, transdermal. And there are incredible, but plants that can do this for you. You know, if I had to say one essential oil, like, you know, say it's like all you're going to be able to find, or, you know, because, you know, I do make blends, so there could easily be a pinworm blend that can be made here. But if I had to pick one, and I hope we're not talking about a child, That's a whole nother story. So this is an adult remedy, sage officinalis. Sounds really simple. You can be eating it too, and fresh is better. But that essential oil rocks, and sometimes I'm even nervous when I see it in the health food store because everyone's all, "Ooh, sage!"
Yeah.
And then I'm like, "Oh my God, that's actually a ketone, and it's it could be neurotoxic if overused." But it is not just going to be toxic. It is able to get the job done. And so it's 3 drops in the morning, 3 drops at night. Very low dose. You got to trust it, and you got to kill them over a month's time. Again, you don't want to just destroy your system and then expect everything to be good. So really give yourself the time to make this happen, and you'll notice that they come out different. They'll be flat, they'll be discolored, they'll be irregular versus looking like a little sesame seed. And if you do notice, those are moving usually, and then they're not moving anymore. Good. And and then you want to think about enemas. I do find enemas are better than colonics to start, just to start, because you want to, whatever's dumping out, you don't want to kind of push it all the way back in and flush out. I like that you're just soaking the pan, the lower part of the colon, and maybe laying on your right side and kind of massaging your ileocecal valve at 7 o'clock in your abdomen, down in your right hip, and you just want to kind of, start flushing more out easily. And then once you think they're really dying or you're seeing less and you're feeling better, then you would want to do a series of 6 colonics, 1 a week, if you can. Otherwise, you're going to keep doing those enemas, maybe 3 days on, 3 days off for a couple months. But colonics you could do once a week, and it would get really high up, and kind of anything that's in your intestines, small intestines, it would really activate it flushing through, and then you could totally, all it takes is like little scale die off and some sugar for those to reinvent themselves. It's really, really, really hard to get rid of a microbe in general, especially pinworms. They are major sugar multipliers. So they will reinvent themselves, come back to life. So it's like sugar's a kind of, how little can you do? Because hello, let's be realistic, right? So how little can you do for the next 6 months? And just like that, using that sage. And then once it's dead and you don't see any, maybe you go down to like 1 drop of sage every day, just to keep that, or 1 every morning, every night. You can't use sage for more than like 6 weeks at that dose. So it's a short-lived kick butt remedy. And then, you would switch over. Yeah. Yeah. So then I would switch over to and the reason I say marshmallow, even though it's a little sweet and nourishing, you need a buffer for that mugwort. So like the biggest issue you have is drying yourself out, and then it's even harder to get the pinworms out. So you don't want to use, you could use maybe a little black walnut, but people overuse it. You could do maybe 1 dropper of black walnut tincture twice a day with your mugwort tea and marshmallow.
Sounds nice.
Yeah, but if you're also eating sugar while you're doing this, oh my gosh, it's going to be so frustrating, because then they're just not going to go away. So you got to look at all sugars, and I'm so sorry, but that includes alcohol, dairy, gluten, and then also honey, sugar, and you can have a handful of blueberries. They're sweet, but they've got enough enzymes and show that they don't have a glycemic index in a handful. So that would be the one thing you could maybe do. Or maybe one instead of the blueberries. You can't do both of these.
Yeah.
But you can also do one green Granny Smith, like tart green apple for the malic acid. And it actually helps with flushing the liver and flushing the intestines. Yeah. So that's kind of where I would probably start. And those are the things I would talk to with somebody in clinic that comes in. You know, pinworms is not uncommon. It's very common, you know, and it goes around in families, round and round and round, you know, little kissy poo to the animal or a little eating dirt. And then all of a sudden you're kissing the child and then the child's kissing the other kid or like, yeah, you know, so it's pretty common, you know, that happens. You know, children with pinworms, they can do usually what I do because it's hard to get a child to drink like a whole thing of tea, you know, and all those things. So I would get mugwort and black walnut tincture and do a half a dropper full of each morning and night, and a little bit of, you know, warm, you know, almond milk or something, you know, or a little water. They'll just do it. But I think, you know, that's going to be pomegranate juice. You could do a little bit of pomegranate juice, and that would be a safe sugar that you shift the flavor for a child. But you won't be able to do the sage. Or sometimes I'm like, if I trust you're really going to do one drop, you know, every night for a week, one drop of sage, and can you trust one drop, the sacred drop, you know? But I notice people overuse them with children, and then they get dry around their mouth, and they get rashes, and you're like, this is quite a detox. And, you know, and really, it's too much essential oil. The truth is, but if you really could just do one drop for a week, that's safe and could be very effective. Yeah.
Super helpful. So many good remedies there.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think that's all the questions that we have time for today. But easy. Any final wrap-ups? I want to give a shout out to your amazing essential oil blends. If anyone out there is thinking like, wow, I have these different issues, maybe it's pinworms, maybe it's something else that's coming up for you, DeAnna can do an essential oil blend for literally anything you have going on. So I highly recommend that on our website, DeAnnaessentials.com. You can go and click on the custom essential oil blend, and she'll formulate a super specialized, intuitive powerhouse essential oil blend for you. And then we also have a few exciting courses coming up in the spring, including in January a Tibetan cranial and
Palate release
course. I'm so excited about getting into that pleasure center in the top of our mouth. And then we're going to be having a Panchakarma course. It's going to be really cool. It's going to be partially class, partially hands-on.
Taking some clients in need through the Panchakarma process for 3 days is very precious. Talk about group environment and deep healing. It is so powerful. Yeah, that's going to be a fun February week.
And then in March, we have a Meridians, so Nadi's and Norma, I believe, course.
All the meridians and pressure points. Yep.
So you can sign up for all 3 of those, technically 4 of those courses. We have an awesome deal going on where you get $100 off of each of them. So you can sign up for that on our website too. Just really lean into all the DeAnna wisdom. We just did a advanced pulse course the other week, and just getting to listen to DeAnna for 2 days was amazing.
Oh my gosh, we were like a bunch of bedheads,
Totally.
as I call it. We were like a bunch of bedheads geeking out on pulse pathology and the tracking of rhythms and spikes and disease states, and how to like see when a system is going down in the body, and how to read emotions at birth. I mean, it was really a deep dive class. And it was so fun to see my newbie classes kind of the first uniting of my newbies with like all the people that have studied with me for years. You know, there was quite a wide range, you know, and just seeing who has made a whole career of this from class, you know, and then all the people that are masterminding their careers and their life work, you know. So yeah, I don't want Pulse to die. Maybe that's when I'm going to make sure you know, I don't want the veil to be thin on Pulse.
Pulse alive.
I want Pulse to stay alive, and I want people to be able to learn to trust themselves and trust the equations. Like there's the science and the intellect of tracking the human body according to elements and being able to deduct, you know, and come up with solutions. And then there's so the depth of intuition and like it's a tap in. You're feeling somebody's heart. It's their blood song, the song of their heart, you know. We saw a little 2.5-year-old yesterday and you know, in clinic and like we're on the little baby wrist pulse because we see children, we see anybody, we even see little critters in the clinic. So, but we're like taking this little baby pulse and we had to totally do a little barter with raisins. Yeah. It was like, you know, I think it was 40 minutes in before she would let us take her pulse. Aww. And then it finally ended up being a raisin barter, which I just think is so cute. And then she was like, yeah, I want some raisins. Here you go. And then she was an open book. But, you know, how do we support that? And how do we, you know, keep this alive for us to track blood cell analysis? You know, so my clinical course, save the date, it starts in September and it's here in Sonoma County. So, you know, I do Sonoma County pretty much every other year now. I don't do it every year. I just want everyone to know that, you know, Sonoma County is every other year, and then I'll take it global every other year. And I got some ideas up the sleeve. Yeah, so stay tuned. But if you are in the area, you know, it might be good for you to start considering that. And we do have it up live, I believe. So even if you wanted to start a payment plan so that you're a little further ahead. It also gives you a bunch of webinars and things that just allows you to start getting in the flow. And you can also start coming to clinics as an intern. Like, you know, if I know you're down for the long haul, come on, let's get started. You know, you can start as a note taker and just start witnessing. It's so precious.
It is so precious.
So yeah.
You'll be amazed how much your intuition already is able to tell you by being in that service position for someone. Yeah, I have some ideas. I've done something like that.
And some people take the class to be a practitioner for themselves and they want that, like, whatever's going on, I can take care of it. But a lot of people take class to be a practitioner to their family. It's a really good family care. Clinical foundations. I mean, that's what it is, right? Being able to be a clinician for yourself and for your people around you, and then maybe even become a whole entire practitioner life support journey. So that's what I'm really up to, and that's what I love. So that's why those clinics are student ran, because you can't just learn something. You have to then be able to experience it. And that's the beauty of the Punch Karma class too in February. So yeah, anybody who's interested, you can get a hold of Abby at info@DeAnnaEssentials.com and you will get Abby G over here. Yes. and she will support you in making this a reality for yourself. Yeah, well, I hope everyone has a great winter solstice. And we will see you, I think it's, you know, right before New Year's, you know, next time we have our Ask D. So enjoy your winter solstice time, you know, appreciate the gatherings you're at, and remember to speak to each individual, and it's a little better than trying to meet into the groups. Keep yourself safe in the gatherings you're going to, just by, you know, making connection with each person that's there. It's just such a better way to focus in and get to know each person in your family instead of it being this who am I in this group?
Yeah, totally.
You're just you, and you get to talk to everybody.
Yeah.
You know, so keep that in mind. But have a great season, winter season. Here we go. How do we hibernate?
Mhm. Thanks so much, DeAnna. Thank you, everyone who tuned in.
Yom.